Okay, so let's begin by cultivating our motivation. And really appreciating not only being a human being, but having a precious human life. And thinking how rare it is to actually encounter the Dharma in samsara. How many causes and conditions we had to create in the past to have this present opportunity. And so not wanting to waste it, let's really make a strong determination to face ignorance, to demonstrate to ourselves again and again and again why ignorance is incorrect. Both the ignorance of karma and its effects and the ignorance of the ultimate nature. And then with a heart that really wants to repay the kindness of others, let's make a strong determination to attain full Buddhahood for the benefit of others by eliminating all the ignorance and thus all the afflictive and cognitive obscurations that prevent us from being of the greatest benefit to all beings. So last week we were talking about, the week before we were talking about how death is definite and nobody can escape death because as soon as we're conceived in our mother's womb, we're in the process of dying. And so we meditate on the certainty of death so that we understand why it's important to practice the Dharma. Okay, so we don't meditate on the certainty of death to get panicky and freaked out and morbid or anything like that, but just so that we begin to see that it's the Dharma that is going to help us at the time of death. And since death is definite and everything else in our life is not, it behooves us to try and make some preparation for it. And then last week we were talking about the uncertainty of the time of death, and specifically on the first point under that, which is that there's no fixed lifespan in our continent. And in addition, that somebody's when a person dies, they're always in the middle of doing something. So it's not like we can plan our death, get everything all set up, all orchestrated, control freaks, and then complete everything we want to complete and then go. It doesn't work like that. We're always in the middle of doing something. So last Tuesday, my mom was at this, not the day before yesterday, but about 9 days ago. She was doing her bookkeeping, not feeling very well. She hadn't been feeling well for, actually several years, but just a few days. My sister came and convinced her to go to the hospital On Monday, she didn't want to go. On Tuesday, she conceded to go. And then she died early Saturday morning. So there she was in the middle of doing her bookkeeping. She still had bills to pay and deposits to make and accounts to balance. And she couldn't finish them all. She had to go in the hospital. In the hospital, she was telling my sister-in-law what to do to finish up the month's bookkeeping. But I don't think she was able to finish with all those instructions either. And then she gradually slipped into a coma. She had a difficult death. Thursday night was a really bad night. One reason was that because the hospital staff was coming in and running tests and doing procedures. But I think even more than that was that she was terrified. And she was exhausted, but she was afraid to sleep, I think, because she was afraid that if she went to sleep, she might die. And so she stared at the ceiling most of the night with her eyes wide open, saying, "I can't believe this is happening." Or, "Can you believe this?" You know? So just these two kind of things again and again. Because clearly her body was not doing what she wanted it to do, and she couldn't believe what was happening to her. By Friday morning, she mustered all of her strength and said, "Please leave me alone." But the tests, some of the tests still continued, because my dad wanted to make sure that they did everything possible to save her life, although she was dying. And then very late Friday night, early Saturday morning, then she died. I think by the late afternoon of Friday, she was pretty much in a coma and struggling to breathe. The immediate cause of death was pneumonia, but behind that there lay heart disease and many, many other things. When we were talking about it this last weekend, because I went back for the funeral, we realized that my mom's had so many health problems in her life, one after the other after the other. So it's amazing that she lived to age 82. But it's a very good example of the uncertainty of the time of death, because my dad and also my sister kept saying, "She died so quickly. You know, it was so unexpected." And from my side, I've been waiting for the phone call for several years because I've been seeing her get weaker and weaker. But I realized in talking to the other family members that when you see her regularly, you don't see the gradual decline. And also because throughout her life she's had so many medical problems and she's always bounced back. And so there's been one kind of crisis after the other, especially in the last couple of years, you know, falling regularly, many, many things, many phone calls. And so people thought, well, she would just hopefully bounce back from this one too. But her body was in such a state that that was not to happen. And clearly the karma had run out. So it's an interesting thing, isn't it, how we say, oh, she went so quickly. Yeah. Actually, it took 82 years. It was slow, in a way. Yeah. Or if you count from the recent years of her very poor health, you know, still it's been happening a long time. And that, when our time comes, you gotta go, It doesn't matter who's rooting for you, what hospital you're in, how many doctors are there, and how many incredible number of procedures they're running. It can't stop death from coming. And so this is a lesson for all of us, because I wonder, in hearing the story of especially Thursday night, which was so bad, and then Friday night, she actually died, wondering at what point she thought she might be dying. I know on Tuesday when she went into the hospital, she said to my sister, "Oh, I heard, somebody say I might be dying. Is that true?" Yeah. And my sister said, "Well, they're going to try and make you better." But, how we never think that we're going to be the ones who die, and especially on that particular day. It's always mañana, isn't it? Not me, not this time, not in this way. And yet, the Lord of Death doesn't listen to anything. Now, of course, the Lord of Death is a mythical character. There's no real Lord of Death in terms of a being. But if you ask, what is the real Lord of Death? It's ignorance, And it's the ignorance that causes us to be born. Because sometimes when you look at somebody dying and you say, "Oh, death is so cruel," then the thought comes in the mind, well, if only we could prevent death, then the person wouldn't have to suffer, and we wouldn't have to suffer from separating from the person. So the Lord of Death, this mythical character, is cruel for taking away what we treasure. But that's not the Dharmic view, that's the worldly view. It's the worldly view that thinks if only we could live forever, then everything would be fine. Is that true? No. Yeah. And so then we have to say, well, why does death come? Death comes because of aging. And where does aging come from? It comes from birth. And where does birth come from? It comes from ignorance. And so if we want to stop the pain of death, either our own or the pain of separating from the people that we care about, then we have to eliminate ignorance. There's no other way to do it. Absolutely no other way. And so it's not a question of, if only, or we should have, or why couldn't they have? The real thing is, my mind is overwhelmed by ignorance. Am I doing something to combat my ignorance? Yeah, because that's the only solution to this tragedy of birth and death. Okay, and so the reason that we're meditating on death is so that we get some energy to overcome ignorance. Okay, why? Because we see the result of ignorance. We don't like that result, so then we want to do something about what causes that particular result. So we want to overcome the ignorance. So meditating on death gives us that kind of energy. So like I said before, it's not a thing of just tweaking our samsara and making it so that death doesn't happen. Because first of all, that's impossible. But second of all, do you want to live in this body infinitely? even if it doesn't die with a body that gets old and sick, and live in a situation where you're constantly encountering misery and separation from what you like, you know? So we have to really look deeply at what the situation is. Okay. So we're going into the second point of the second section. Okay, the second section is that the time of death is indefinite. And the second point is consider how many factors lead to death while the conditions for life are few. Okay, we usually think the conditions for death aren't very many and the conditions for life are a lot. But it's actually the opposite. Okay, so we'll explore this. The Precious Garland says, living amidst the causes of death is like a lamp in the wind. Does a lamp in a wind have a good chance of staying on? No. Okay. Living amidst the cause of death. So we're going to say, well, what are the causes of death? I'm with a bunch of live people, you know? And I have food and clothing and shelter and medicine, and there's great hospitals and medical advances. And what are these causes of death that you're talking about? Well, what's quite interesting is that they're all around us. Yeah? In my mom's case, cause of death was some itty-bitty bacteria. That's the immediate cause of death. And pneumonia, of course, now all the weakness and things like that comes from not getting exercise and heart condition and all sorts of other stuff. But, you know, I flew down to Southern California. There were a number of people who died in the fires in Southern California. So you build a home to protect yourself, and then you die in that home when it burns. You build a home to protect yourself, and there's an earthquake, and you die in that home. You eat food to stay alive, but then you eat bad food and get food poisoning. Okay? We build cars for convenience and then die in a car accident. We build trains and planes for quick travel and then die in accidents. There's so many causes of death all around, you know, unexpected. Remember we were talking last week about making a list of the people we know who have died? And that next morning at breakfast we were talking, and you know, how the incredible number of ways that we've heard of people dying. Somebody was saying, was it somebody was eating? What was it?
My grandpa's.
Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, tell us your grandpa's
So he was having lunch. He tipped his Coke up, and there was a yellow jacket inside the Coke.
Right.
Stung him in his mouth.
Okay, so your grandma was making your grandpa lunch every day for years.
Yeah.
And so he was eating lunch, he had a Coke, he lifted the Coke to drink it, and there was a yellow jacket under the lid that flew in and stung him, and within 20 minutes he was gone. Yeah, now who would ever think? Yeah, so we look all around, and you know, so many ways that people die, and always in the middle of doing something. The friendly letter, this is Nagarjuna, says, as life is as susceptible to harm as a bubble buffeted by the wind, it is really amazing that we have the chance to breathe in, breathe out, and awaken from sleep. Last year, one of my students who came to the Cloud Mountain retreats very diligently every year, She was an attorney, she had a court case, came home, had dinner with her son, played Scrabble and a bunch of games, went to sleep, and never woke up. Died of a heart attack. And she wasn't somebody who had heart problems prior. Yeah. So very, it is amazing that we have the chance to breathe in, breathe out, and awaken the next day. And one day we will breathe out and not breathe in anymore. Or one day we may not awaken from sleep. Yeah, one of my friends, his sister died from Lou Gehrig's disease. Now, on New Year's Day, her husband woke up to find her in the bed next to him, dead. The 400 stanza says, individual elements are powerless, but assembled are known as a collection. Well-being is their balanced opposition. So if you look at the body, it's composed, the old way of looking at it, of the 4 elements, earth, water, fire, and air. And it's a balance, it's a collection of these. And to be in good health, these elements have to have some kind of balance. But they often say that the elements are like 4 snakes in a vase. 4 snakes in a vase are not going to be cool and calm and collaborative. So in the same way, the 4 elements, very difficult to keep them balanced and to keep in good health. The precious Garland says, many conditions are conducive to death. Few are supportive of life, and even they lead to death. Therefore, practice the Dharma always. So that's what I was saying before. Many conditions conducive to death, few supportive of life, and even the ones that support life, if we don't have them in the proper way, they too lead to death. Yeah. So you're driving across the bridge and the bridge cracks, or there's an earthquake. So things that we have to sustain our life very easily can become the cause of death. You have a telephone, you're talking on it during a thunderstorm, and you can get electrocuted. So many different things can happen. Okay, and then the third point under this second section says, thirdly, consider the uncertainty of the time of death due to the extreme fragility of the body. Okay, so we feel like our body's very strong. Yeah, kind of look at my muscles, big body, right? Big body, muscles, young, very strong. Yeah, all it takes is one little microscopic bacteria or one little microscopic virus that you can't even see to enter the body and multiply, and bye-bye. Yeah, all it takes is stepping on one rusty nail and not having access to a tetanus shot. All it takes is being somewhere and eating bad food and getting typhoid. All it takes is being in a room with somebody with TB who is contagious and catching TB. There are so many tiny, tiny things that can kill us. Yeah? So easily. Our body is not that strong. The skin is the protection against the outer world. But our skin breaks like so easily, doesn't it? You bump it and the skin is broken. Yeah? So, and the way some diseases are passed through needles, through sexual contact, things that are supposed to make you happy or even treat illness, and they wind up becoming the cause of death. Yeah, so it's not that our body is so strong and can fight everything off and has so many defenses, because even things we can't see can kill it. And then things that we can see, you know, can crush it and smash it and all sorts of stuff. Yeah, body's very, very fragile. The friendly letter says, if the earth, Mount Meru, the oceans, and embodied beings will be burnt up in the blaze of 7 suns, so not even dust will remain, what need is there to speak of human fragility? So that is how in the ancient cosmology they see this particular world system as ending, you know, in fire through the blaze of 7 suns. But if what it's saying is, if even this world can end, what about our extremely fragile life? So even if you don't look at things in this old cosmic view, still, you know, planet Earth isn't permanent. Yeah, it's going to go out. Our sun's going to go out. None of these things are going to go forever. So if all these things can end, what about, you know, this little body that is so fragile? Yeah, because it's so hard to keep the body healthy, isn't it? You know, this goes wrong and that goes wrong, and you know, it's amazing. Keep tab. You know, I have a headache today. My stomach doesn't hurts today. My back hurts. My little toe hurts. My arm is sore. I scratched myself. You know, my tooth hurts. This is wrong. That's wrong. Over and over and over. You know, this body is not something strong. So in thinking about this, the conclusion to draw is not, therefore I've got to be more attached to my body and pamper it even more. That is not the conclusion to draw from this meditation, okay? It's to realize what the nature of the body is, and to see that because we cannot control what the body does, therefore we have to work on the mind, so that when the body goes out of whack, our mind can be content and peaceful and have a meaningful thought in it. Okay, that's the point of this. If you just want to get scared about your body getting sick and about dying, just go to the doctor's office. You know, they have all these charts about all these diseases you can die from, you know. That's not why the Buddha taught us to think about the fragility of the body. It's not so that we get more attached and more panicky and pamper the body more. It's so that we really see that it's the mind we have to work on, and then go about working on the mind. Creating even a small... The letter to King Kanika says, the Lord of Death is no one's friend, and his attack is sudden. So without putting it off until tomorrow, begin to practice the holy doctrine now. It is not a good idea to put it off until another day, for the time will come when you no longer exist, and that could be tomorrow. Yeah. So even though we always feel we have plenty of time to live, you know, we don't know, and the day that we cease to exist could be tomorrow, or even tonight. Yeah, if we put off our Dharma practice, saying, I have lots of time in the future. And anyway, my conditions now aren't so good. You know, if only I lived at this other place, I could practice Dharma better. If only my stomach didn't hurt, I could practice Dharma better. If only I didn't have to do this work, I could practice Dharma better. If only I wasn't so distracted by this, that, and the other thing. And so we find one reason after another not to practice. But then when we cease to exist, then there's absolutely no time to practice. So therefore, you know, your stomach may hurt, your little toe may hurt, and you may be distracted, but you still practice, because this is the time we have to practice, isn't it? Yeah. It was interesting at the I flew down on Saturday. I got there very late on Saturday, and then Sunday we had to go to the mortuary to make the mortuary arrangements. And so I asked to see my mother's body, and we made the mortuary arrangements, and then we were able to go in and look at it. And it was just incredible. You look and, Adele Green does not exist anymore. She's not there. There's a body, yeah, but that person who used to be merely labeled in dependence upon that body is gone, and no way to call her back. Yeah, I mean, you look, and not there, not there. Yeah, body's there, mind's not there, person's not there. Mm-hmm. So, when that happens to us, we're gone. I was thinking about it, because, when you die, then the person continues in terms of being merely labeled. The general I continues. Adele Green doesn't exist anymore. The general I, remember before we talked about general and specific I? So the general I exists, It's merely labeled in dependence upon whatever aggregates there are right now, which I have no idea what those aggregates are of my mother, of the person who used to be my mother. Right now, no. But, gone. Gone, and no way to call it back. Yeah. So one day it'll be like that for us too. And so then we had the funeral, and so many people came, and so many people said many things. My mom isn't even there to enjoy it. It's a funeral held in honor of her, and she's not there. Yeah? Isn't that weird? They have a whole thing in honor of you, and you're not even there. And she's having some other experience now, which who knows even what that experience is and what she's experiencing right now. I have absolutely no idea, So everybody behind is talking this, talking about that, looking at this, looking at that, yeah? Talking about my mom and this story and that story. And, from her side, she's having some totally different experience and probably isn't even remotely aware of what's going on with the people that she used to be so close to. Yeah? Isn't that weird to think about? Because we feel so attached to some people as if, we're always going to be together even after we die. But, oh, yeah? Quite interesting, because usually with my siblings, when we're together, one of the things we talk about is the health of our parents. And so in recent years, always, how is mom doing? And this is wrong, and that's wrong, and the other thing, and, and so much kind of worry and concern about her health. And we're talking about that this visit. It was so weird, after being so used to talking about her health and trying to make her more comfortable. Don't need to talk about that anymore because she's not here. And the rest of my family thinks that when you die, that's it, you know, basta finito, there's nothing. And, you know, and I'm sitting here thinking about, well, what kind of rebirth could she have? And what she is experiencing now, and is there some way for me to help her in what she's experiencing right now? It was interesting because I flew down Saturday afternoon, as you know, and I could have gone earlier Saturday, but I had been invited to speak at the American Association of University Women. Finally got it right. And I felt very strongly, you know, that, you know, these people were my mothers also. They were just my mothers from previous lives. And so it was good to be able to benefit them, and it would not detract it in any way from benefiting the mother of this life to do that. So I went from there to the airport, and as I'm in the airport and on the planes, I just, this whole thing about all sentient beings being your mother was so strong, you know, because it was just, you know, my mother's dead, my mother's dead. And kind of, you know, all you people around, do you know that my mother just died? No, but you're my mothers, you know, not this lifetime, you're not my mothers this lifetime, but you've all been my mothers. Yeah? And so that same kind of relationship I've had with this life's mother and the kindness I've received from this life's mother, I've also received from all these other people. Yeah? So there's the businessmen and the old ladies and the young women and the children and all these different kinds of people, and just this sense that they're all in these different bodies, but they've all been my mother. Yeah, it was such a quite unusual feeling to really feel that, you know. Your mother's not here, but all your mothers are here. Okay, then the next point, the third section in the death meditation, is that only the Dharma can help at the time of death. At the time of death, our relatives, friends, body, and possessions are of no help. The letter to King Kanika says, as the ripened fruit of past actions, you will be completely abandoned. So this life, which is the ripened fruit of past actions, is over, finished, abandoned. In accordance with your new actions, the karma that you created, you will be seized by the Lord of Death. Nothing but your virtues and misdeeds will escort you, since all will return to their destinies. No one will accompany you. Understanding this, please practice well. So nothing but your virtues and misdeeds will escort you. When we go places, we like to have company, don't we? We don't like to go alone. We like to have company. Our company, as we go from one life to the next, is our karma, our virtues and our misdeeds. That's the company that comes with us. And it follows us like a shadow follows the body. Can't, on a sunny day, you can't cut off your shadow. So the karma that we create follows us in a similar way. So at that time of death, you know, the body, the friends and relatives, the possessions, none of them come with. When I first got to my mother's house, it was late. I went to bed. The next morning when we were going to the mortuary, we had to bring some clothes for them to dress her in. So my sister-in-law had brought out one thing to ask my dad what he thought, but he didn't like that one. So then I went in with her into my mom's closet to pick out something else. And Jane, my sister-in-law, told me that when her mother died, she remembered just sitting in the closet sobbing because all of her mother's possessions are all there. And apparently when my brother came, he arrived a few hours earlier than I did. When he went into her room, he broke down. And so I was thinking about that, you know, because you go in there and there's all the things that belong to somebody that you care about, and you're familiar with a great many of those things, and they bring back memories of different events and different clothes and different things and stuff like that. And I was thinking, okay, so people, you know, breaking down when they're in their mother's closet, seeing all of that stuff, and okay, that's because you're remembering the person using those things, and then that person isn't there anymore, and so you're feeling the lack of that person in your life, you know. And I think the tears come because that person isn't going to be in your life anymore. You know, my little nephew cried a lot that day, you know, because he said, I can't believe I'm never going to see Grandma again. You know? So that feeling of loss of a person in your life. When I went in there, and then I went in a few other subsequent times just to look, I had what came into my mind was, here were all the things that somebody used when she was alive, and now she's gone and she can't use them anymore. Yeah? And they were collected with great care. My mom had very good taste in clothes, you know, and she had very nice clothes, and they were collected with great care and worn with great care. She didn't take what she had for granted. You know, things were not strewn around and, you know, like they weren't worth anything. They were very folded up nicely and kept clean and wrapped in plastic. And she really appreciated the things that she had and treasured them and valued them well. But now, she can't use them now, and they all stay behind. Many drawers, closet, full of stuff that are of absolutely no use. Whereas at the time when she was alive, those things were useful to her, and those things were objects of desire, and if anything happened to them, she would have been upset. Or if spaghetti sauce got spilled on them, she would have been upset. But now, you know, things that we treasure and we keep close to us and that we feel are so much a part of our identity and that bring back memories of events and being with different people and stuff. When you go on, nothing. Those things don't mean anything to you anymore. Yeah? So I was looking at all her slippers and her shoes and, you know, her robes, because she was so sick the last few years. She usually wore just nighties and robes. And, you know, all gone. And so we picked out one nightgown and robe and pink slippers and brought them to the home so that they could dress her. Jagata Mitra said in his letter to Chandra Raja, even if you possess the wealth of a god, in the next world after your death, you will be as one attacked in a barren land, alone, deprived of princes and queens, with no clothes and bereft of friends, dispossessed of kingdom and castle. Although you may have great power and strength, nothing is to be seen and nothing heard. Not one single person can follow you. In short, when not even your name will then exist, what else is there to say? Okay, so he's saying it to Chandra Raja. Raja is a king, so the king named Chandra, or moon. So even if you possess the wealth of a god in the next world after you die, you go on alone just with your karma. None of the wealth comes with. So you might have cars, you might have 401ks, you might have SEP IRAs, you might have stocks and bonds, you might have a checkbook, you might have a bank book, you might have, lots of furniture and several cars and a holiday house and a boat and, lots and lots of different things. But when we die, they all stay here and we go on alone. In Singapore, this isn't a Buddhist practice, it's a folk religion practice. Very often among the Chinese in Singapore, when somebody dies, this isn't so common now, but some people still do it, they burn paper computers, paper houses, paper money, paper cars, all these things in paper, thinking that you can transfer them to your loved one so that they will have them in their next life. I always found it incredibly amusing and also poignant and sad that the bank notes that they burned, the paper money that they burnt, was from the bank of hell. So somehow there was this thing of my relatives were going to be born in hell, and so I will send them money from the bank of hell that they can use in hell. And if your family was well off, then the amount of paper things they would burn was just huge, boats and cars and houses and all made of paper that were sold especially to be burnt, to transfer to your loved one in their next life. Okay? But that, we may shake our head at that. That's a cultural tradition. But isn't our collecting lots of stuff just as ridiculous? In thinking that we're going to be able to take any of the stuff we have with us to the next life? And yet, we guard all of our things so precious, and I don't want to share with anybody, and this is mine, and if I give it to you, I won't have it. So we keep everything for ourselves. Yeah? But then when we die, we can't take it with us. All the money stays right here. All the whatever stays right here. And we miss the opportunity to create merit through the practice of generosity. Yeah? Because we were somehow thinking that we would be able to hold on to all of these things. So when we die, it doesn't matter whether we're rich or poor. It doesn't matter if you die in a nice, clean hospital bed or in the gutter, because when you're dying, your senses are absorbing. You're not even aware of all of that. And when you're dead, it doesn't really matter. And what happens to our body after we die, it doesn't really matter. Some people are so fussy, and different religions, many different customs, and people so afraid of what's going to happen to their body was so... When we went out to we did a ceremony in the chapel, and then we went out to the gravesite and put my mom in one spot. And one of my mom's friends, her husband is buried just one row up and a few to the side. And my mom's friend said, oh, and this is where I'm going to stay. So Adele will be really close to each other. We can chat.
Yeah.
You know? Just this. The cemetery's name was Pacific View, you know? So you had a view of the Pacific. Yeah. You know? Very interesting. So when we go on, you know, we can't take any of this stuff with us. And so especially, okay, money and wealth, you know, it stays here. But our friends and relatives, they all stay here. They all stay here. You know, and like I was saying, we had this huge thing. And so many people came who I haven't seen in years. I mean, many of the people I didn't even recognize because it's been 20 or 30 years since I've seen them. And it was just astounding seeing these people again. And yet none of us could accompany my mom. And even if we had died at the same time as her, still we couldn't accompany her. And when she was lying in the hospital that Thursday night, being so panicky and fearful, none of us could take that fear away from her. Yeah? My sister-in-law, my sister-in-law was like a daughter to my mom, and when my mom got sick, she asked for my sister-in-law to come. And, you know, she couldn't take the suffering away. My sister was there, couldn't take the suffering away. My dad was there, couldn't take the suffering away. Yeah? And so all the people we love, you know, at the time of death can't stop the pain of death, can't stop us from dying, and can't accompany us on to the next life. You know, if we're fortunate and if we're a Dharma practitioner, we'll have some other Dharma practitioners around us who can remind us of the Dharma when we die. But it's got to be our own mind that switches gear and thinks about the Dharma at that time. Nobody else can think about the Dharma for us. They might encourage us or remind us, but we've got to actually do it. So none of those people, you know, my mom and dad were married 61 years. He couldn't go with her. Yeah? And then our body, so not only our friends and relatives, not only our wealth and possessions, but also our body we leave behind. Yeah? And so we put together a little PowerPoint with pictures of my mom and showed it. And it was quite something, you know, to see, because we had a few pictures from when she was really little and so on. And, you know, that body was always with her. And then at the time of death, her consciousness went on, and the person was no longer there, but the body was there. Yeah? So you even have to leave your body. And when we went to I won't tell that story. My dad made some comment about my mom being very pretty. And I had, you know, when she was younger, and I had, you know, never really thought of that. You don't usually think of your mom in that way. But I was looking at those pictures, and my mom she was very, very beautiful when she was young, you know. But then the body just ages, you know. And if you could look at one of those pictures of her, and I'll show you some of them later, you know, with this beautiful smile and dark eyes and dark hair, and then the corpse, Yeah. And like she can't take the body with her. And anyway, who would want to take it with? Yeah. And so the whole purpose of meditating on this, on the fact that at the time of death only the Dharma comes with, is to help us so that we practice the Dharma purely, so that we don't get consumed and we don't consume our life with the 8 worldly concerns. Because the 8 worldly concerns are all wrapped up with attachment and aversion to sense pleasures, possessions and wealth, friends and relatives, body, reputation, praise and blame, all these things that have to do with friends and relatives and stuff. And we can spend our life, very attached to these things and so upset when things don't go the way that we want. But at the time of death, we separate from all of those things. But what comes with us is the karma that we created in trying to procure and protect them. So all these friends and relatives that we treasure so much, who were so concerned with what they think about us. Yeah? To actually think, how much do I care about those people and how much do I care about what they think about me? How much do I care about them and how much do I care about their approval? And what kind of reputation I have with them. Okay? So you see that these two of the pairs of the 8 worldly concerns, praise and approval, blame and disapproval, and then good reputation and good image and bad reputation and bad image. Both of those pairs are very intricately related with the attachment to the friends and relatives, aren't they? Because who do we get the praise and reputation and the blame and notoriety from? It's other people. And yet at the time of death, we can't take any of those people with us. But while we're alive, we can create a lot of negative karma, grasping to try and get good reputation and praise and approval. And we can create a lot of negative karma, protecting ourselves from blame, and disapproval and bad reputation. Because this is, so many of our negative actions are about that, aren't they? No, somebody talks bad about us, we're attached to our reputation, so what do? We talk bad about them. In return, we create the negative karma. That person doesn't come with us when we die. Even the following year, we may not know them or remember the situation, but that karma we created by speaking badly of them, that's on our mind stream and comes with us. Yeah? Or we feel like, I really want this, I really want this, I want this, I want this, I want this. You know how our mind gets sometimes, I want this, I want this. So we can create so much negative karma, trying to, sometimes we might lie to get something that we want. We might, not be completely honest in our business dealings in order to get what we want. We may do all sorts of things to get the money, to get what we want, or to get the possessions that we want. And if those things are threatened, we get so upset and so angry, and we may strike somebody, we may yell at somebody, we may speak harshly to them or ruin their reputation. So we can create a lot of negative karma in relationship to our possessions and things. But none of those possessions come with us at the time of death, but the karma comes with us. Okay? Same thing with the body. We can create so much negative karma, out of attachment to this body. I've got to get the right kind of this and the right kind of that, so my body's always comfortable and it's fed the right things and it has this and blah, 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 blah. and, you know, to create a lot of negative karma out of attachment, spend a lot of time doing that. Our body gets hurt, you know, we get angry and upset, and we, you know, people kill each other because they harm their body, yeah, or all sorts of negative karma out of attachment to the body, and yet the body doesn't come with us at the time of death, but the karma we create, you know, in defending this body and giving pleasure to this body, that karma comes with us. Okay. So I'm not saying don't take care of our body and things like that. Don't worry about friends and relatives and money and, you know, just kind of let everything go. No, I'm talking about how do we have a healthy relationship with these things so that we can use them to create good karma, so that we can use the relationship, the friends and relatives, the possessions, to benefit other people. Yeah, and create good karma for ourselves and benefit them so that they can create some good karma. So how do we have a healthy relationship rather than a relationship of attachment in which we cling to things and then we get so angry when we can't hold on to them? Okay? So it comes back, how do we have a healthy relationship with our body? How do we have a healthy relationship with the people that we live with? How do we have a healthy relationship with money and possessions? Because we need them to live. Okay? So think a lot about this coming week. Yeah? Think about these points that we just went through. It's time to stop now. But, and, you know, really make it, how can I have a healthy possession, a healthy relationship with these things? And, you know, think about how the time to practice Dharma is now, because we're not sure when death will come.